So our mission for this deep dive today is to gently untangle the science behind irregular periods. We want to give you the actual medical vocabulary and, the biological mechanisms you need to understand what's happening.
Right, so you can walk into a doctor's office feeling fully equipped.
Exactly. Equipped and in control. We want you to feel empowered.
I love that approach. Because knowledge really is the best tool for self-advocacy. When you understand your body, you take the fear right out of the equation.
It is so true. And hey, before we really jump into all this, if you are finding comfort in these kinds of conversations, I would absolutely love to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Yes, please join us.
We are just building this really supportive, caring space here for women's health. We focus on the real science, but keeping it gentle and easy to understand. And we would love for you to be a part of this community.
We really would. So to guide our exploration today, we are pulling from two really fantastic, highly comprehensive clinical sources.
What do we have today?
We're looking at clinical pathways for managing irregular menstruation and another text called Navigating Menstrual Health, Diagnosis, Treatment, and Clinical Care.
These sound very clinical.
They do sound super clinical, right? But don't worry, we aren't going to get bogged down in scary medical jargon today. We're just going to break it all down together, like friends, so you can understand exactly how your body functions.
Which is exactly what we need because, before we can even begin to understand how to approach a medical solution, we first need to understand what the body is actually trying to communicate.
Right, you have to decode the message first.
Exactly. So both of our sources start by basically defining irregular menstruation. And they refer to it as significant deviation or a notable shift from a typical monthly cycle.
Which is a really important distinction.
It is. But wait, if the baseline is so highly individualized from woman to woman, how do doctors even know what they are looking for when we come into the office?
Well, what's fascinating here is that the medical definition of normal, it isn't this single rigid 28-day timeline.
Oh, thank goodness.
Right. The clinical texts deliberately use the phrase deviation from your typical cycle. So they're establishing right away that normal is actually a range.
Okay, so what is that range generally?
A standard cycle can realistically be anywhere from 21 to 35 days. So the diagnostic trigger isn't about, failing to meet some textbook 28-day standard.
Right.
It's really about identifying a notable shift from your own personal baseline over a period of time.
That makes so much sense, honestly. When I was reading through the materials trying to visualize how this whole biological feedback loop actually operates, the best analogy I could come up with is a symphony orchestra.
Oh, I love a good analogy.
Right. So think of your cycle like an orchestra playing a very specific piece of music. Your brain, specifically a region called the hypothalamus, is the conductor.
Okay, the brain is the conductor.
Yep. And the ovaries are the violins, and the hormones like estrogen and progesterone are basically the sheet music.
That is a brilliant way to picture it. The hypothalamic pituitary ovarian axis, or HPO axis, as they call it in the texts, is exactly like that.
Right. And so if the conductor is focused, the violins come in right on cue, an egg is released, and the cycle just continues naturally.
The music plays perfectly.
Exactly. But if the conductor gets distracted, say, by a blaring fire alarm outside the concert hall, the violins might miss their cue entirely.
Oh,
The tempo changes, the song skips a beat, and we experience this physically as a delayed period, or maybe a completely missed period.
Or unusually heavy bleeding, or even just spotting between cycles?
Exactly. All of those symptoms. But a missed cue doesn't mean the violins are permanently broken. It just means something disrupted the conductor.
That is so validating to hear. And the sources emphasize really distinguishing between a momentary distraction and a fundamental issue with the orchestra itself.
Like an occasional thing versus an ongoing thing.
Yes. An occasional irregularity, say, one cycle that's a week late because you were traveling or you got a bad flu, that is just a single skipped beat.
Which happens to literally almost everyone.
Totally. But an ongoing problem where your cycle is consistently unpredictable or excessively painful or just completely absent for months at a time, that suggests the conductor is consistently losing the sheet music.
Yeah, okay.
That's when we transition from a normal physiological fluctuation to, well, a clinical irregularity.
Okay, let's unpack this, because knowing what a shift looks like is obviously step one. But the immediate next question is the why.
Right, the root cause.
Yeah, what is actually setting off those fire alarms in the concert hall? Because we read so much about lifestyle factors versus actual medical conditions.
Oh, the spectrum is huge.
Right. So how do everyday things like stress or just a lack of sleep biologically compare to clinical conditions when it comes to disrupting our periods?
Well, the sources map this out across a really wide spectrum of causes. They look at everything from environmental inputs to complex internal endocrinology.
Okay, let's start with the environmental side.
Sure, so on that side, we have lifestyle stress, poor sleep, extreme exercise, and significant weight changes.
The things we deal with every day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When you experience high stress, whether that's from a massive deadline at work, emotional turmoil, or even pushing your body to its absolute physical limit at the gym, your adrenal glands pump out cortisol.
Ah, cortisol, the famous fight or flight chemical.
You got it. Now remember the conductor in your brain, the hypothalamus. It is highly, highly sensitive to cortisol. When your cortisol levels spike and they stay high, the hypothalamus essentially decides, we are in a survival situation right now. This is not a safe environment to reproduce.
Wow, so it just shuts it down.
Pretty much. The hypothalamus suppresses the release of a hormone called GnRH.
Which is gonadotropin releasing hormone, right?
So spot on. And without GnRH, the downstream signals to the ovaries are completely halted. The ovaries don't get the message to mature an egg.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so you don't ovulate a state, clinically known as an ovulation, and therefore you don't get your period.
That is just, it's incredibly validating.
Isn't it?
The stress of a major life event or poor sleep isn't just like in your head. It is a literal chemical roadblock in your brain shutting down the reproductive signal.
Exactly. When this happens due to stress or, say, low body weight, it's called hypothalamic amenorrhea. Your period didn't just get lost. Your brain actively paused it to conserve energy.
Okay, so that covers the stress side. But what about the other end of the spectrum? The literature examines more complex internal medical conditions too, right?
Yes, very thoroughly.
It specifically points to thyroid issues, hormonal imbalances, and, most notably, PCOS and endometriosis.
Right. Those are huge factors.
So how do those mechanisms differ from just having a really high stress, high cortisol month?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, conditions like PCOS or endometriosis are complex systemic medical states. Let's take PCOS, polycystic ovary syndrome, since both sources highlight it as a leading cause of irregular cycles.
Okay, let's talk about PCOS, because I know a lot of women hear the word polycystic and they immediately imagine these massive, dangerous growths.
Oh, totally.
But that's kind of a misnomer, isn't it?
It is a huge misnomer. Despite the name, PCOS isn't fundamentally about cysts at all. It is actually an endocrine and metabolic disorder.
Really? So it's more about hormones and metabolism.
Exactly. In PCOS, the body often produces higher levels of androgens. These are typically thought of as male hormones like testosterone, though, women naturally produce them too.
Right, just usually in smaller amounts.
Right. Furthermore, many women with PCOS have insulin resistance, meaning their bodies have to pump out extra insulin just to manage their blood sugar.
Okay, so you have high insulin and high androgens.
Yes, and that combination disrupts the ovaries. The ovaries are trying to prepare an egg for ovulation, but this specific hormonal environment basically stalls the process.
Oh, I see.
The follicles, which are just these tiny fluid-filled sacs that contain the eggs, they develop partially, but they just don't release the egg.
Wait, so those stalled follicles are what look like cysts on an ultrasound?
Precisely. They aren't true cysts, they're just paused eggs.
Wow. So the orchestra is trying to play, but the sheet music is written in the completely wrong key.
That is the perfect way to describe it.
The egg doesn't drop, progesterone isn't produced to stabilize the uterine lining, and the cycle becomes highly, highly irregular.
Exactly. And then, you have conditions like endometriosis, which the sources also discuss at length.
Right, which can be so painful.
Unbelievably painful. Endometriosis is when tissue that is similar to the lining of the uterus grows outside the uterus, so on the ovaries, the fallopian tubes, or pelvic tissue.
Does that stop ovulation like PCOS does?
Not always. It doesn't always stop ovulation, but it can cause profound inflammation, incredibly painful periods, and irregular bleeding.
Which brings us to a really crucial juncture here, because understanding these biological mechanisms, knowing the difference between stress-induced hypothalamic amenorrhea and an endocrine issue like PCOS, that's incredibly empowering.
It absolutely is.
But how do we actually find out which one is affecting us? Because the reality is a lot of listeners might be sitting there thinking, okay, this is great information, but getting a doctor to actually figure out my specific issue is incredibly frustrating.
Oh, I know. It can be exhausting.
We have to acknowledge that, historically, getting an accurate diagnosis for conditions like endometriosis has taken some women literally years of being told their pain is just, normal.
Yes.
Yes.
That is a very real, documented clinical hurdle. The history of women's health diagnostics has not always been a straight, validating line. We definitely see you and hear you if you've experienced that.
It's so unfair.
It is. And that is exactly why understanding the diagnostic tools that are available and what they're actually looking for is so vital. It transforms you from a passive patient into an active, informed participant in your care.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the sources dive pretty deep into the specific clinical assessments doctors use.
Yes, the toolkit.
Right. They mention internal imaging like ultrasounds and tissue samples like endometrial biopsies. Now, I want to push back a little here on behalf of the listener, because hearing words like ultrasound or especially biopsy,
They sound scary.
they sound incredibly intimidating. A lot of listeners might wonder, when a doctor orders a biopsy, are they automatically screening for cancer? What are they actually looking for?
Is a completely natural reaction to hear the word biopsy and have your mind immediately jump to a worst-case scenario like cancer. But I want to demystify what these tools are actually doing in the context of irregular periods.
Please do.
These are basically profound, fact-finding missions. An ultrasound, for instance, is how a doctor looks at the actual structure of the concert hall.
Right, the internal imaging.
Exactly. A transvaginal ultrasound allows the clinician to measure the exact millimeter thickness of the endometrium, which is your uterine lining.
Oh, wow. Millimeters?
Yes, very precise. They can look at the ovaries to see if there is that classic pearl necklace formation of stalled follicles indicating PCOS, or they can look for structural issues like fibroids or polyps that might be causing heavy bleeding.
That makes sense. But what about the biopsy? If they aren't just looking for cancer, what is the clinical value of taking a tissue sample? That sounds painful.
An endometrial biopsy involves taking a tiny, localized sample of the uterine lining. What the pathologist is looking for under the microscope is the cellular architecture.
Okay, what does that tell them?
Well, for instance, if you haven't ovulated in a long time due to PCOS, your body hasn't been producing progesterone.
Right, because the egg didn't drop?
Exactly. Progesterone is the hormone that keeps the uterine lining thin and stable. Without it, estrogen continues to build the lining up, month after month.
Oh, I see.
This can lead to a condition called endometrial hyperplasia, which is just an overgrowth of cells. A biopsy simply checks if the lining is overgrown or if it shows the proper hormonal effects. It tells the doctor exactly what hormones your body has or hasn't been producing.
Okay, so the ultrasound shows the structure and the biopsy shows the cellular environment.
You got it.
It's not a punishment or a blind fishing expedition. It's the exact map that gets you to the right destination.
Exactly. And the reason gathering this precise data is so crucial is because of what happens next.
Yeah.
Based on what they find, health professionals can recommend what the sources call tailored treatments.
Because the treatments aren't one size fits all, simply because the causes aren't one size fits all.
Right. If the ultrasound and blood work show PCOS, the treatment might involve medications that address insulin resistance, or maybe hormonal therapies to protect the uterine lining.
What if it's the thyroid?
If the issue is a thyroid imbalance, treating the thyroid often completely resolves the menstrual irregularity all on its own.
Oh, that's amazing.
And if there's a structural issue like a polyp causing heavy bleeding, a minor surgical procedure might be the answer. The beauty of these diagnostic tools is that they ensure the care you receive is customized precisely to your biology.
So what does this all mean for us in our day-to-day lives? Because, medical tests and tailored clinical treatments are obviously crucial, but so much of our health happens way outside the doctor's office.
Oh, absolutely.
What happens in our kitchens, our bedrooms, and our daily routines.
The everyday application of all this science.
Exactly. The texts actually lean heavily into this, highlighting what they term preventative self-care strategies and lifestyle adjustments.
Which I love.
Me too. It's not just about waiting around for a prescription. It's about the routine modifications you can make to support your own HPO axis.
Yes, simple things.
Like managing the emotional and physical stress so that your hypothalamus stops pumping out cortisol, or prioritizing restorative sleep because circadian rhythm disruptions directly impact the hormones that trigger ovulation.
Which is an incredibly practical, proactive way to support your body. But, this raises an important question, and it's one of balance.
How so?
Because while self-care and lifestyle adjustments are super vital pieces of the puzzle, the medical literature draws a very firm line.
Yeah.
Both sources explicitly highlight that alongside lifestyle care, there are specific urgent symptoms and warning signs.
The red flags that say the orchestra isn't just distracted, it's actually in distress.
Yes, exactly. If you are experiencing bleeding that soaks through a pad or tampon every single hour,
That's a lot.
it is. Or if your pain is so severe it causes vomiting or prevents you from standing up, or if your period vanishes for more than 3 months when you aren't pregnant or on hormonal birth control, these are clinical warning signs.
So you can't just sleep those away?
No. Preventative measures like stress reduction are wonderful, but they do not replace professional medical attention when the body is actively signaling distress. We want to firmly reassure you. Stepping into a doctor's office isn't a sign that your self-care failed.
Not at all.
Seeking medical help is, in itself, an act of profound self-care.
I really want that to sink in for everyone listening. Going to the doctor is an act of profound self-care. That completely shifts the narrative, doesn't it?
Really does.
It moves us away from this fear of, what's wrong with me, and towards, I respect my body enough to get it the exact professional support it needs.
Precisely. You are acting as the advocate for your own biology.
And speaking of fears, I want to address a very specific anxiety that almost always comes up when we talk about menstrual health.
Oh, I think I know what you're going to say.
For a lot of women, the moment they experience an irregular cycle, their mind immediately jumps to fertility worries.
Yes, the fear of infertility.
Exactly. The fear is just, my period is irregular, therefore I must be infertile. It's so stressful. What do the sources say about that connection?
It is so important to untangle that fear.
Yeah.
Because the clinical texts are very clear. An irregular period does not automatically mean infertility.
Oh, what a relief.
Right. Just remember the mechanisms we literally just discussed.
Mm-hmm.
If you have hypothalamic amenorrhea from stress, your fertility isn't gone. Your brain has simply pressed the pause button until the environment is safe again.
It's just waiting.
Exactly. If you have PCOS, the eggs are still there. The environment just needs to be hormonally balanced to help them release.
That makes so much sense.
Yes, irregular cycles can definitely make tracking ovulation more challenging. But with the tailored care we discussed, whether that's lifestyle adjustments, insulin management, or ovulation-inducing medications, many women with irregular cycles go on to have completely healthy pregnancies.
Wow.
Irregularity is a symptom to be managed. It is not an absolute sentence on your fertility.
That is incredibly reassuring. It brings everything back down to a manageable, logical level. So if we look back at the journey we've just taken through these clinical pathways, irregular periods are simply a notable shift from your own unique baseline.
Right.
They happen when the biological conversation between your brain and your reproductive system gets interrupted.
And those interruptions range so widely.
Yeah.
They can be driven by environmental factors like a spike in cortisol from emotional stress, extreme exercise, or a lack of sleep.
Or they can be driven by complex internal conditions.
Yes, like the hormonal imbalances of PCOS or the inflammatory environment of endometriosis.
And if you need answers, there are clear, standard diagnostic tools available. An ultrasound looks at the physical structure of your organs, and an endometrial biopsy checks the cellular and hormonal environment of your lining.
They really aren't tools to fear. They are maps to guide you.
Exactly. From there, you get tailored care based on your actual biology, and you pair that with simple lifestyle care tips like sleep and stress management to really support your system.
You are empowered to take care of your body at home and equally empowered to know exactly when to seek professional help.
It is a complete, scientifically grounded toolkit for understanding your body. And as we wrap up this deep dive today, I know you had a final thought you wanted to share.
I do. I want to leave everyone with one final thought to ponder. We talked at the very beginning about how unpredictable cycles can cause so much anxiety and how easy it is to feel betrayed by your own biology when it isn't functioning perfectly.
It's such an easy trap to fall into.
It is. But instead of viewing an irregular period as a betrayal by your body, what if you viewed it as your body's most honest form of communication?
Oh, wow.
Right. If your cycle is a highly sensitive biological messenger, what is it asking you to pay attention to in your life right now?
That is.
Wow.
I love that. It completely reframes the entire experience. It's not a broken machine. It is a conversation.
Exactly. It's just your body asking for a change in tempo.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into the science of your cycle. We really hope you feel a little more informed, a little more empowered, and just a lot more connected to your own biology.
We really do.
Please remember to be kind to yourselves, be incredibly patient with your bodies, and we will catch you next time. Take care.